The movie starts with our main guy, Frank Martin. He's not just an average driver. Frank used to be a soldier in the Special Forces, but now he works as a transporter. His job? Delivering packages, no questions asked. But here's the catch. Frank has 3 strict rules he never breaks. Rule 1, no changes to the deal. Once it's set, it's set. Rule 2, no names. He doesn't share his and he doesn't want to know yours. Rule 3, never open the package, no matter what. Frank takes these rules very seriously. And trust me, they're going to be tested big time in this story. We see Frank heading out for a delivery. He drives his car and stops near a bank that's being robbed by a gang. He's there to pick them up. 4 gang members get into his car, and as they enter, Frank presses a button that changes the car's license plate. The gang leader tells Frank to drive fast before the police show up, but Frank surprises them by refusing to move. He explains that he agreed to transport only 3 people, not 4. He tells them that these are his rules and he can't break them. The gang members threaten to kill Frank if he doesn't drive, but Frank calmly tells them that the car only works with a password, and no matter what they do, they won't be able to drive it. The gang leader offers Frank a lot of money to start driving, but Frank refuses. He stays firm on his decision. Finally, the gang leader kills one of his own men to reduce the number to 3. Only then does Frank start driving. The police arrive and begin chasing Frank and the gang. Frank is an incredibly skilled driver, and even though the police manage to surround his car, he escapes after a long and intense chase. Frank then delivers the gang members to the agreed location. The gang leader pays Frank the agreed amount, along with a tip. He then asks Frank to make another delivery to a specific area, but Frank gives the extra money back, saying he doesn't change deals. The gang members leave in another taxi to escape. Frank changes the car's license plate back to the original one and drives away. When he gets home, he cleans his car. Later, Frank sees on the news that 3 people have been arrested for robbing the bank. These are the same people Frank delivered. While Frank is watching the news, there's a knock on the door. He opens it to find his neighbor, Inspector Tarconi, who is a police officer. Tarconi is suspicious of Frank because Frank is always quiet and his car is always spotless. Tarconi tells Frank that there's a car similar to his that was used to transport 3 members of the gang who robbed the bank. The police have the license plate number of that car, so Tarconi asks Frank to show him the plate of his car. Frank confidently takes Tarconi to check the license plate. After seeing it, Tarconi realizes it's not the car they're looking for, so he apologizes to Frank. He tells Frank he'll come over for coffee later. Just then, Frank gets a call from someone asking him to make a delivery. Frank meets this person, who gives him a package to deliver to a specific address. Frank agrees to the job and explains his 3 important rules. They agree on the details, and the next day, Frank goes to pick up the package. The man who hired Frank places the package in Frank's car and leaves. Frank doesn't look inside the package, he never does. Frank starts driving to the delivery address, but halfway there, he has to stop to change a tire. While working on the car, Frank is shocked to realize there's someone inside the package. But Frank doesn't open it because of his rule, he never looks inside what he's delivering. He finishes changing the tire and continues his journey. Later, Frank stops at a store to get some food. While eating, he can't stop thinking about the person inside the package. He buys some juice and decides for the first time to break his rule and open the package. Inside, he finds a girl named Lai, tied up. Frank doesn't untie her but gives her some juice to drink. Then he puts her back in the package, locks the trunk, and continues driving. As Frank drives, he notices Lai moving around a lot in the trunk. He pulls over, opens the trunk, and tells her not to scream so they can talk. Lai says she needs to use the bathroom. Frank takes a rope, ties it around her neck, and lets her go into the forest to relieve herself. A few minutes later, Frank calls out to her, but she doesn't answer. When he goes to check, he's surprised to find that Lai tied the rope to a tree and ran away. Frank searches for her and after a while finds her. He's angry but carries her back to the car. Just then, 2 police officers approach Frank's car. They see Lai tied up and assume she's been kidnapped. The officers attack Frank, but Frank fights back and knocks them out. Frank then drives to the delivery address. He meets the person who's supposed to receive the package. The man asks Frank if he looked inside the package, but Frank says no, he never opens packages and doesn't care what's inside. However, the person receiving the package is suspicious of Frank. He asks Frank to carry out another delivery. Frank agrees and goes over all the details with him. Frank takes the new package and the payment, then leaves. He stops at a shop to have lunch and rest before making the delivery. But just as he's about to get back into his car, it explodes. Frank realizes the man had planted a bomb in the package to kill him. Angry and determined, Frank goes back and breaks into the man's house. He fights and kills the man's guards, then searches for the boss, but he's nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Lai sees the chaos and tries to escape while Frank is busy fighting. Once Frank deals with all the men, he takes one of their cars from the garage and drives away. On the road, Frank is surprised to find Lai in the car with him. He stops the car, takes her out, and leaves her on the side of the road, frustrated with her. But soon after, Frank feels bad for her. He reverses the car to pick her up. He takes Lai to his home, gives her some food, and then goes to sleep. Later that night, Lai looks around and finds out that Frank is an ex-military man. She begins to trust him. Meanwhile, we see the gang leader, named Street, who tried to kill Frank. Street visits one of his men in the hospital and asks him what happened. The man tells Street that Frank didn't die from the bomb and that he came back, attacked them, and beat them up. The next morning, Frank wakes up to find Lai preparing breakfast. He's surprised by her behavior but sits down to eat. Just then, his neighbor Tarconi shows up for a visit. Tarconi sees Lai in Frank's house and asks who she is. Frank lies and says she's his new cook, explaining that he's lonely and needed someone to prepare food for him. Tarconi then asks Frank why his car isn't outside. Frank tells him it was stolen the day before and that he was about to report it to the police. Tarconi informs Frank that his car exploded in front of a restaurant yesterday. Frank acts like he doesn't know anything about it. Tarconi says he believes Frank is telling the truth but asks him to come to the police station with Lai. He needs to file a report about the car theft and also wants to ask them some questions. Frank agrees. After Tarconi leaves, Frank talks to Lai and senses something isn't right. Suddenly, Street and his men attack Frank's house. They fire a missile at the house and start shooting non-stop. Frank quickly takes Lai to the basement to escape. They go through the sewers and manage to get away unnoticed. Once they're safe, Frank and Lai head to the police station to talk to Tarconi, who has already heard about the explosion at Frank's house. Tarconi starts questioning Lai and Frank about what happened. Frank tells Inspector Tarconi that he and Lai were out, and when they returned home they found it burned down. But Tarconi asks Frank about the shooting that happened at his house. Frank says he wasn't home and doesn't know anything about it. Just then, Tarconi's boss calls him, so he steps out to talk. While Tarconi is away, Frank and Lai stay in the office. Lai sits at Tarconi's desk and uses his computer to find information about the person who's been after them. She discovers that his name is Street. When Tarconi comes back, he doesn't notice anything and lets Frank and Lai leave. But later, when he opens his computer, he realizes they used it and were searching for someone named Street. Lai asks Frank to help her find Street, but Frank refuses at first. Lai then tells Frank about a ship that's going to transport 400 kidnapped people who will be turned into slaves. She explains that her father and siblings are among the kidnapped, and she begs Frank to help her save them. Frank is moved by her story and decides to help her. Frank and Lai go to Street's office. Frank points a gun at Street while Lai searches through files about the ship. Street tells Lai that her father is coming to the office and will punish her. Frank is shocked because Lai had told him her father was one of the kidnapped people on the ship. Street then tells Frank that Lai has been lying to him. Suddenly, Lai points the gun at Frank. At that moment, a man named Kwai enters. He is Lai's father, and also Street's partner in their human trafficking business. Kwai tries to calm Lai down and convinces her to lower the gun. When she does, Kwai orders his men to kill Frank. Just when they are about to shoot Frank, Street stops them because he finds out that Inspector Tarconi is on his way to investigate Street's connection to Frank and Lai. When Tarconi arrives, Street tells him to arrest Frank for kidnapping Lai. He claims Frank came to collect money in exchange for Lai's freedom. Tarconi sees Frank unconscious but senses something isn't right. He reluctantly arrests Frank and puts him in the cell. When Frank wakes up, Tarconi tells him everything. Frank explains to Tarconi about the ship and the 400 kidnapped people who are about to be sold into slavery. Frank asks Tarconi to let him go so he can save them quickly, saying he can act faster than the police. Tarconi agrees and helps Frank by pretending to be his hostage so Frank can escape the police station. Once Frank is free, he takes a small boat and heads to the ship's location. When he arrives, he fights and kills Kwai and Street's men. When Kwai and Street find out that Frank is on the ship, they quickly change their plan. They move the kidnapped people from the ship into large containers and load them onto 2 big trucks. These trucks are protected by several cars filled with armed men. Frank fights his way through and kills everyone at the scene. Frank then gets into a car and chases after the 2 trucks, but during the chase, his car breaks down. Just then, Frank spots a farmer's small plane nearby. He threatens the farmer and forces him to fly the plane so he can catch up to the trucks. When Frank gets close enough, he jumps out of the plane with a parachute. He glides skillfully and lands on one of the trucks. Once on the truck, Frank throws a parachute at one of the protection cars, causing a collision that kills some of the men. Frank then takes control of the truck by pushing the driver out. But he's shocked to find Street inside the truck with him. The two fight violently and Frank eventually kills Street. Frank stops the truck on the side of the road, but as he gets out, Kwai appears and points a gun at him. Frank has no choice but to surrender. Kwai takes Frank to another location. When they arrive, Kwai tries to kill Frank, but suddenly Kwai is shot. Kwai looks to see who shot him and is astonished to find that it's his own daughter, Lai. Lai is devastated by what she's done, and Frank comforts her with a hug to calm her down. Meanwhile, Inspector Tarconi and the police arrive to free the 400 kidnapped people from the trucks. Frank successfully completes his mission, saving all the kidnapped individuals, and here the movie ends. If you enjoyed this recap, please like this video, subscribe for more movie breakdowns, and share it with friends. Thanks for watching. See you next time.